Okay, how close to quorum are we?
Not very.
Not very. We are still close to time to begin. We can cover a couple of non-consequential things early. The air quality forum didn't meet this month, so there's nothing there.
I also don't think that I'll have a formal request for the ordinance on complete streets, or really the climate protection update. It's just more an informal or an informational update for the good of the commission as a whole.
Right. Right. And I think that's perfect. Well, I'd like to have more people show up. I don't know how we're going to do here.
Yep. Let me also say, Carol, I'm going to have to leave at 5:30 today.
Well, maybe we better jump in. Why don't I go ahead? We will skip the minutes for now, and let's just review who is online right now. So it's Carol, and identify yourselves.
Marty.
Michael Kelly.
Nathan
Scott
Madden.
Plant.
Oh.
Sorry.
Nathan and Scott here.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. Let's go ahead and give Michael a chance to update us on what's happened with the Climate Protection Steering Committee, and then go ahead and update us on what's going on with the bike lanes and complete streets.
Okay. Well, first off, good afternoon, everyone. Hope you all are having a pretty good Wednesday. So first with the Climate Protection Steering Committee. So the Climate Protection Steering Committee has been meeting pretty regularly since we got some new folks on board. For those who aren't familiar, I was voted vice chair. So in addition to my duties here, I also am helping Robin Ganal, the new chair of the Climate Protection Steering Committee, with her duties on that group as well. In terms of what our primary focus has been up to this point, it really has been focusing on trying to assist and inform city staff as they work to develop language and outreach related to the climate protection resiliency plan update. And I definitely want to take this moment to give a special shout out to Laura and Andy in particular, because I know that the Climate Protection Steering Committee, we're asking a lot because there's a lot that we want to get done. But obviously that request is being made to staff. So we do appreciate their willingness to work with us and to do their best in their own capacities to serve us as well. So in terms of where things kind of stand with the Climate Protection Steering Committee, with the Climate Protection Resiliency Plan, the committee has been working with staff to try to get an update on, or try to kind of formalize kind of the process for how we're going to consider and advise on potential elements that go into the new plan. So things around equity, things around which areas to prioritize, and various elements like that. And Laura can speak to additional elements if I forget anything in particular. But just the general gist is that there's a lot of work that will be happening between now and the end of the year, and they've already been doing a great deal of outreach. I'm not sure how many of you were aware or able to attend, but they have had several in-person engagements. I think there were at least a couple that happened in the last week or so, to gather feedback from the community about the climate protection plan update. So if you're able to attend those, greatly appreciate your insights. So beyond that, the committee has been working to offer additional advice on potential legislation, and that includes the recent push. Yes, yeah. I mean, I really can't stress enough how much Laura has been out doing the work, and I really appreciate her efforts on everything thus far. But again, we have also been working to advise the committee, or advise the city council on prospective legislation, including the climate emergency resolution that was sponsored by Councilwoman Robinson, as well as I believe there was another resolution that was introduced. Updating the legislative priorities at the state and federal level to include more language on climate resiliency. So for those of you who did not know or weren't able to attend, we held a special meeting where we as a committee identified additional areas of focus for sustainability as it related to the priorities at the state and federal level, and shared those with the special committee on legal review. Beyond that, it really has just been trying to just be a little bit more proactive than we have been in the past. And so that's kind of a basic 30,000 foot view of what's been going on. So I'm happy to answer any questions from the rest of the committee about the work we've done thus far. So Emily, just as a point of clarification, are you referring to remaining seats on the Environmental Management Commission or the Climate Protection Steering Committee?
So sorry, I am the Climate Protection Plan Steering Committee. I thought there were two open still, but I could be wrong if I heard that incorrect. Thank you so much for the update as well.
Sure, and thank you for the clarification and the question. So my understanding is that Robin has made several suggestions on potential individuals to fill those vacancies, and so I, at least as far as I know, the ball is kind of in the mayor's court in terms of figuring out who he wants to appoint to fill those remaining vacancies.
And Mike, if I could clarify, I'm not sure Robin made specific recommendations. More so, I think she was encouraging people to go to the mayor's website to fill out the application to participate on the commission or on the committee. So that was kind of how I think it was left at the last steering committee meeting. So certainly encouraging folks to just get on and fill out the paperwork to be appointed. And Robin did do a good job of getting that into her testimony during the climate emergency resolution last week in front of the committee, which included the mayor. So I think that was a smart move to kind of slip that in there.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification, Andy. And so, Emily, kind of to your point, then, if you or someone you know is still interested, we would absolutely encourage them to apply. And I also want to make sure that for everyone on the call, I'm sure most of you know this, but if you're interested in serving on the Climate Protection Steering Committee or the Environmental Management Commission, we absolutely would love to have the additional help. And so that offer is on the table, and wanted to make sure I made that clear for everyone in attendance today or watching the recording. Are there any additional questions? Yes, please apply online. It makes the process much quicker. So are there any additional questions for me about the Climate Protection Steering Committee?
Is that the same committee that's been working for a number of years, or is this something different? I mean, we had this.
Marty,
Yeah, go ahead.
Marty, it's the same committee, but different members.
Ah, okay. Okay, great.
Sorry, does the call to questions apply to members of the public as well? I don't want to speak out of turn.
Oh, yes, of course, Billy, please.
Sorry. All right, sorry. Rule of order. Do you, so thank you, all for your continued work and encouraging the mayor's office to make sure that our advisory boards are up to full force. Do you have a sense of how many applications have been submitted for these vacancies? I'm curious if that's something that you all might be aware of. I know some folks have expressed interest, and just, as somebody who works with a grassroots organization, just like if it'd be possible to, folks who want to reach out to the mayor to say, like, encourage them to take action, making sure that we're kind of being specific, encouraging them to, don't want to be saying, hey, fill these vacancies if there haven't been any applications. So just kind of curious if you can share any more about that process or where that's at.
I don't have any numbers in front of me. I was Andy or Laura. Do either of you happen to have the numbers, or Jerry? If not, it's okay. As just figured I'd ask.
I've tried to reach out to the mayor's office on more than one occasion over the past 2 years to at least get a feel for, how many candidates there are, when appointments would be made. It's a pretty guarded secret from the mayor's office, so I find out pretty much when the public finds out.
So I will say, if there is a concern or a question about transparency with numbers, I'm sure that organizations here and individuals who have an interest in knowing more can certainly try to find out how to find more of that information. So do with that what you will, Billy. Are there any additional questions? Billy, again, thank you for your question. Okay, so assuming from the silence that everyone is good on that, I know that Carol had also asked me to spend a little bit of time talking about a piece of legislation that was introduced that was a little bit concerning, especially from an environmental standpoint. So a couple weeks ago, Councilwoman Robinson introduced ordinance number 210966. The ordinance would have done several things that were a particular concern. It would have directed the city manager to remove bike lanes in her district unless the neighborhood association said that they wanted them, would have effectively banned new bike lanes from going in unless the city council and neighborhood association signed off. And most concerning is that it would have opted the council district, her entire council district, out of the city's complete streets ordinance. For those of you who aren't familiar, complete streets as an idea is this idea that streets should be built for all modes of transportation, regardless of your preferred mode, whether it be walking or transit or using an assistive device like a wheelchair or biking. You deserve to be able to get from point A to point B as safely and reliably as anyone else. And so the city adopted an ordinance in 2017, sort of codifying this principle and basically saying, as opportunities arise in Kansas City to make more of our streets complete, we should take them. It's been on the books for several years, and it has helped to inform our efforts around building a more multimodal and, important for this group, sustainable transportation system, because obviously transportation is our largest source of greenhouse gas emissions. We have to do more to encourage these forms of transportation. So on that stance alone, we were very, very concerned about the legislation. But it was also a little bit concerning because it created somewhat of a concerning sort of framework and precedent for council members to be able to opt out of legislation that they didn't like. So if a council member somewhere down the line, decided that they didn't want to institute something related to sustainability policy, if this ordinance were to be adopted, they would then have a framework and precedent to be able to point to say, you granted this for this district, you should do the same thing for me on this issue. And so we raised these concerns with Councilwoman Robinson, and we were able to meet with her as an organization. Bike Walk KC was able to meet with her as an organization to kind of bring these concerns to her attention. And it is our understanding that Councilwoman Robinson is willing to potentially work on legislation that kind of gets closer to her main concerns. So Councilwoman Robinson made it very clear in our meeting that her primary concern, really beyond bike infrastructure, was really with the issues of community engagement. The city has struggled in the past with community engagement, especially around infrastructure projects, and that has created mistrust, which ultimately makes it harder for some of these projects to move forward. And so trying to find ways to improve the legislation to kind of address those concerns is really something that she would like to see in order to kind of move to a point where, from a legislative standpoint, there's something that everyone can kind of get behind. To answer Nate's question very quickly, yes, yeah, and Ben answered it already, but yes, both pieces of legislation were sponsored by Councilwoman Robinson. So our understanding at this point, the way that things stand legislatively is that Councilwoman Robinson requested a hold until December 1st on the legislation. Following our conversation, she has indicated that she may be willing to request another hold while we try to work on some different language. And in the meantime, she has been gathering community feedback on the legislation. There was a public in-person meeting on November 1st. There was a virtual meeting on November 3rd, and there will be another virtual meeting next Thursday, November 18th at 10 a.m. I know there were a couple of people here in attendance today who were at a couple of those meetings, and obviously through my own professional capacity with Bike Walk KC, I've reached out to several of you. But I do think that Councilwoman Robinson's concerns about community engagement are well-founded, and we fully agree with her, and we fully agree with the need to create safer streets for people who walk, for people who may be walking to school, for all manner of things. It's just that we don't think that we need to pit sidewalks against bike lanes in order to try to get to that point. And so we appreciate the opportunity to work with Councilwoman Robinson to try to find a legislative solution that really works for everyone. So that's kind of the spiel on that. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them on this ordinance. Okay. Well, if there aren't any questions or anything, then again, yes.
It seems like if people had somewhere to go on bicycles, there would be more bicycles. And I guess what I mean by that is there is places to go, but you might have to pedal halfway across the city, and it's a large place. And so it seems to me that we can't just do the bicycles alone. We have to put drugstores near people, or kind of like it used to was a long time ago, where there's more square feet of grocery stores than ever, but there's way fewer grocery stores, and there used to be one on several different corners near where you lived, and I brought that up somewhere else too. I guess we could all have a delivery service. We could all have a delivery service bring our groceries to us and solve the problem that way. You understand what I'm saying? If we had.
So I think I get what you're saying, Marty. I think that the thing is that it really comes down to the issue of choice. Like it's not to say that any one particular mode should be, just the absolute one that everyone has to use. Everyone has different needs, everyone has different places to go. But the idea is that as a city, we should be building options and the choice for people to be able to choose how they want to get from one place to another. So it's not to say that we should build bike lanes exclusively. That's never been our point, and I don't think it should be the city's point either. It is that if there is an opportunity for us to build our roads and our systems in a way which supports as many modes as possible, we should be doing that, and we shouldn't be pitting the smaller modes against one another, because the bigger issue is our over dependency on driving alone. So that's not even to say that driving doesn't have its place. I know that there are plenty of champions even in this group here who want to see more electric cars, and electric cars do have their place, but specifically from a sustainability standpoint, we can't rely on driving alone, even if it's all with electric cars, because electric cars alone aren't going to get us to the lower point that we need to when it comes to lowering our transportation emissions. The most effective and quickest way to lower our emissions when it comes to transportation is by driving less. And the easiest way to do that is to not just build more bike infrastructure, but to build more sidewalks and safer pedestrian facilities, and to invest a great deal more in transit, specifically rapid transit.
And I think it's fair to say that having a good network for pedestrians and bikes is part of how you access transit.
Yes, that is absolutely right. And I mean, even from an organizational standpoint, we try to work with our counterparts at the KCATA, because it is very evident that making it easier for people to walk or bike to transit is what makes that multimodal choice that much easier for more people to make. So yes, absolutely.
Are there any other questions for Michael? If not, thank you, Michael.
Everyone.
And I hope you'll stick around and chime in some more. We have a quorum, and so I wanted to go back to the review of the minutes from September and October. Rachel was nice enough to go back and prepare some minutes for our awards ceremony. So first, are the September minutes acceptable to you all as written?
Yeah.
Additions or corrections? Can I have a motion to approve? Come on, somebody.
Motion to approve, I'm sorry.
Okay, a second?
This is Julie. It's the second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Or
Aye.
raise your hand or whatever.
Aye.
Any opposed, raise your hand. Okay. Now let's take a look at the October minutes. Are there any additions or corrections to the October minutes?
No changes for me.
Yeah. Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve as drafted?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed, raise a hand. Okay, they are approved as written. Thank you, Rachel. While we still have Michael, and since this is related to the climate protection planning as well, I would like us to move next to Resolution 210967, the Declaration of Climate and Ecological Emergency. Who is
Okay.
Andy?
Yeah, that's going to be Carol. Yeah, I'll take this one. And I didn't have a full presentation prepared for this per se. I just kind of want to give a quick overview of some of the changes that came out of the substitute that I think the commission had a chance to review an original draft. And then through the input of additional stakeholders and feedback from staff, the resolution was kind of added to, so we have a committee substitute for it. So I just thought I'd kind of hit some of the highlights of this. I did recently just get a copy of a clean draft and an authenticated draft from the mayor's office. So I emailed that out to the commission here maybe about an hour ago. So if you want to take a look at it, feel free to do so. And I don't mean to read the whole thing to you. I just kind of wanted to highlight some of the things that I think the challenge will be is for us to kind of look at the resolution to kind of decipher what are the takeaways and what are the activities that need to occur to try to implement this resolution to the best of our ability. Of course, we're right in the midst of the climate planning process, which, as we talked about in the commission's original meeting about this issue, it makes it a little bit more challenging. But I think we can move forward with at least some consideration of some of these sections. So the substitute that came out ended up adding 4 sections to the resolution. And just as a review, the original resolution basically, of course, was declaring a climate and ecological emergency in Kansas City. It was kind of highlighting the concerns of the vulnerable communities and kind of making sure that we focus on that in our climate action planning activities. Of course, it's rallying the support of our elected officials, the citizens and staff in the creation of this plan. And then section 5 was talking about subsidy programs, and that is what I think piqued Councilwoman Robinson's interest in this resolution to begin with. It was from the Environmental Management Commission's annual report, where you basically identified several projects and programs around the country that's kind of supported climate resilience efforts in those communities. And I think Councilwoman Robinson saw this as a great idea and wanted to kind of tie that to this resolution. So the first 5, I would say, were probably the core of what the original resolution was about. Of course, including it as the legislative priority for the state and federal was included in that. But what came out of that, the additional 9, 10, 11, and 12 were some interesting and probably well thought out additions to this. The first one I'll mention was revisiting the goals. So as you all know, the city has our climate neutral goals for the community at 2040 and for the city operations at 2030. And so section 9 kind of encourages the city to revisit those goals on a more regular basis. And so, as information comes available from IPCC or other sources, it's just kind of a reminder that we should kind of consider those particular data sources, revisit the goals, and see if there's any amendments or changes or to our plan, which at this point we're assuming we're going to get a plan approved by council sometime in January or February. But I think down the road, a year down the road, 2, 3, 4 years, whatever, it will remind us that we do need to revisit those goals from time to time to see if they're still relevant. Section 10 is a kind of a focus on utilities. So in section 10, it's encouraging utility companies that service the community to kind of align with the goals of the city. So in this case, being climate neutral by 2040. So that was identified in section 10. Section 11 goes into supporting the city supporting federal commitment to climate action. And then I would wrap up with section 12. This is just basically where the Kansas City will will encourage other cities, other municipalities in the region and beyond to take similar actions. And there are organizations that do kind of rally these types of resolutions. I've already been kind of looking at some of those organizations where we can kind of sign on to and get kind of registered, if you want to call it that, as participating in this particular action. As of the date of the resolution, in this country, it was about 167 cities, counties, townships had signed on to a climate emergency. Before we had actually finished with the resolution, it was about 150. So like 15 or 16 had joined on before we had passed ours within a matter of 2 weeks. Globally, you're looking at closer to about 2,000, a little bit over 2,000 municipalities, local governments around the world that sign on to these things. So anyways, that's just kind of a quick overview of this resolution. Take a look at it in more detail. I'm quite sure that the Climate Protection Steering Committee and our stakeholders will be wanting to revisit this in more detail at a later time to kind of really kind of peel this apart a little bit more and really try to attach meaningful actions to some of these sections in this resolution. So I think that is the gist of it. Of course, Michael, if you had any other comments on this, I know your committee was involved with this quite a bit as well, so feel free to add to if you need to.
I will just reiterate some of the comments and just say thank you, Andy, for your work on this ordinance or for this resolution, and for working with the Climate Protection Steering Committee to make sure that our suggestions and dialogue was relayed to the members of the City Council. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, well, we're kind of on a theme here. I wonder if we want to have an update on the planning process from Laura, and then we'll move on. Does that
Sure.
work? That work?
Yeah,
Or
it's
is
a good
that
idea.
coming from me?
Well, and I was just going to, before we turn over to Laura, I was going to mention as well, that kind of staying with this theme that if you didn't catch it earlier, Laura and myself, along with representative from Climate Action KC, spoke at the city's business session in front of full council at 2 o'clock today. So we gave a presentation on both the regional plan and kind of an update on what the city's doing with our planning process. So from that, we did that. We had rushed through a lot of material, and I didn't time it, Laura, but what did we do it in 20 minutes?
Our particular part was like 10, maybe 15 at the most.
Yeah. Okay, so with that, Laura, why don't you go ahead and take it from here?
Okay, so I'll just I'll go ahead and give you guys just some slides from the slideshow that we presented to council because I think it's kind of relevant. Just a reminder of the overview of our various engagement phases for this plan. So phase one, where we were just listening to community to find out just their thoughts on the whole climate crisis in general. Started in June and ended approximately September. And then phase two, which is our collaborate and explore phase, actually, I think technically just ended last night with our last strategy session. But we do have a meeting next week with Kansas City Industrial Council and the Chamber to talk about some strategy ideas with them. And also I have one with a community out in South Kansas City coming up next week. So just a few stragglers coming in on those meetings. But that phase was where we were gathering strategy ideas from the community based on, we kind of gave them these, for those of you that attended know this, but we gave them boards that have the different strategy ideas in our various areas that were in the plan, the regional plan, and then asked them what was missing. And we did get a lot of good feedback on some strategies that were missing. And so now we're beginning our prioritize and align phase. That's going to be a more inward facing. The consultant's going to do some high level analysis on those. Well, first off, they're going to put the strategies in buckets. and they're going to do some high level analysis of what strategies are going to really get us to our climate goals. And then we're going to take once the analysis is done, we're going to take that to topical area work groups. I'll give you a little more information on for analysis. And then we're hoping for a draft plan by January. The prioritize and align phase is pretty much going to happen during the month of December. So just kind of a quick overview of how much participation we did get in the process. So the online participants, and this is actually, it says phase 1, but this does include phase 2 as well, because we had a lot of the surveys, the maps and things like that that were in phase 1 were carried over to phase 2. So we had quite robust engagement online, we believe, for what the plan was. And then our climate justice workers, Justice and Jelly, have had 81 community conversations with over 500 stakeholders, a lot of dialogue, and mostly focusing on our council districts with our highest climate vulnerable populations. But there was also some pretty robust conversation with the Northland as well. This is kind of a reminder, these are the climate action areas that we decided on for the plan. And I can't remember if we had completely decided on them when I last talked to this group. So I wanted to go ahead and kind of reiterate what those were. And so we've got 6 buckets. Those are our strategy areas on the outside: mobility, energy supply, natural systems, homes and buildings, food, and waste and materials. At the center, where everything is going to resonate from, is the climate justice and equity piece. And then community resilience, the financing and innovation piece, and the community empowerment piece are going to be woven into all of these various action areas as we go. And so this is just kind of from our strategy sessions that we had, where we asked community what we're hearing is important from community around mobility are kind of things we already knew. And this is coming not only from the EMC experts and the Climate Protection Steering Committee folks and our advocates that came to these meetings. Thank you, Billy, for coming to, I think, every meeting but one. We really missed you at Southland. We're hearing them from community as well. So they like the idea of complete streets. They like expanding alternative transportation programs and having a system of protected bike lanes and sidewalks for people to access. As far as energy supply, we're hearing a lot about smart grids. We're hearing a lot about community solar and solar panels on homes. Specifically, people are really wanting access to solar. And then, of course, the utilities need to go to renewables. Natural systems, this one was, we've got a lot of strategies coming out of natural systems. It's kind of a hot topic right now, but of course, increasing our tree canopy and preserving the green space we already have is a big deal, and encouraging and requiring the use even of native plants on some developments and on city property. And then just evaluating opportunities to increase use of green development practices within other plans and policies of the city. For homes and buildings, these are kind of, the consultant put these together based on what we're hearing. What I'm really hearing from community is make our homes energy efficient, help us find out how to get cool roofs on our homes. That's really big coming from community. How do we reduce our utility bills? But then, of course, also from our stakeholder community, we're seeing bolster the current benchmarking program that we already have and start building performance standards. Really, a lot of communities want flood barriers to help protect infrastructure along our creeks and streams. And then building, really just adopting enforcement strategies in order to get our homes and buildings. Why is my phone going off like crazy? I apologize. I'm trying to get it away from me. And healthy housing standards. Food, we're hearing support our farmers and our ranchers and traditional agricultural practices, environmentally friendly agricultural practices, and Marty, soil protection and repair. Soils become a really big deal. Waste and materials, really it's get some composting up and running. They really want us to do that. And then managing our construction and demolition waste to divert that material, that actually came up more than I expected. And then get us comprehensive solid waste management plan so that we can actually reach our diversion goals this time around. So that was kind of just a few of the strategies we're hearing from community that would fit within those various strategy topic groups. And so here's where we are now. The topical work groups have been scheduled. So this is going to be a 90-minute meeting of each topical area work group, and that's going to consist of our subject matter experts, our advocacy groups, and community. So we're going to put everybody kind of in the same Zoom room together and kind of hash out which of these priorities are going to actually be implementable in Kansas City after the consultant does that high level analysis and gets them back to us. We're kind of got what it's going to be is almost like a suite of items to choose from, to kind of pick from. What can we work on now? What is, you know, what are our advocacy groups or our nonprofits already working on? What can we get funding for right now? And how much is that going to move the needle on carbon reduction? So those are ready to go out. I'm in the process of updating the playbook site so that this information is on here. And I'm working with the consultant to get our registration links up so you guys can register for them. At this point, though, if you are interested in being part of any of these topical work groups, please just email me and, you know, say, hey, I really want to be part of the food group, and I will put you on our list of stakeholders to be involved. We've already got about 40 folks on that list. And I'm also going to be sending an email out to you as soon as to the EMC and the Climate Protection Steering Committee as soon as we have these up and running to be able to register to make sure that we get you signed up for it. And then I'm going to follow up with all those folks that have already told me they were interested and we've already put on a spreadsheet to make sure they actually do get signed up. So
Laura,
that's kind of,
we have a couple of hands up. I don't know if there are questions about this.
I don't know, but here we go. We're to the question part. So
Michael, did you want to go? Well,
okay.
I have it seems to me that the food and natural systems and composting have a real relationship. They're more natural. The whole thing is natural, and the only reason that agriculture might be separate is because it has veered off to chemistry or something. So anyway, I don't know what you can do to keep those, to break the walls between the silos that you may be setting up.
well, and we're not trying to set up silos in this case. What we're trying to do is utilize the framework that the regional plan has already used. So those buckets are already created. We actually reduced them down quite a bit from what they had. But we totally understand that all these strategies are interconnected. And when we come to a final plan, we have our list of strategies. It's going to be in a specific topic area, but over here on the side, it's going to also say what other areas it's going to influence. So in the end, we're hoping if you want to be part of multiple work groups, that you join multiple work groups. If you can't, but you just want to make sure that certain strategies are really considered in those work groups, the city can make sure that if you send us an email, that we get that to the work group. So there's all kinds of ways to get involved in that. But I think in the end, it's gonna seem a lot more seamless. We've just got to try to break it up because it's such a huge beast to tackle that even though they're all interrelated, it would take hours to go through the interrelational concepts with a group of people. So kind of breaking it out, biting off small chunks that are in the end are going to be a whole plan.
And Laura, if I could just add to this,
Sure.
if it wasn't clear enough, you know, at the end of the day, as we've always been saying from the very get-go, is we're looking for a very strategic, focused plan that meets our goals, that we can find funding for, that you know, a little bit more focused. But that doesn't mean that all the work that has gone into all the solutions that have been proposed will be forgotten and left behind. You know, I think the intention is to still include those additional solutions and strategies in an appendix of the plan, so that, you know, if you want to, I mean, you're going to have the basic plan, which folks can read and see what the main strategy will be. But if you want to get into the details, there's going to be lots of accessory stuff attached to the back of the plan.
Right. And all of those strategies that are attached to the back of the plan are going to also have who can help us implement this. And when that organization is ready to pick it up, or wants to run with it, then we will definitely work with them to do that. But the main strategies that we're going to focus on are the ones that we can really tackle right now to reduce carbon.
Is soil carbon sequestration being considered seriously?
I don't know yet, because we don't actually get to make those decisions. This is a community plan. So when it falls out when the consultants do the analysis, all they're going to hand us is the data. And then that particular topical work group is the one that's going to determine that. So we don't know what's going to come out of it any more than anyone else does at this point. And that's kind of how we're working towards equity and making sure that the right folks are at the table. So if you know folks that need to be at the table for that particular discussion, we need to make sure they're there.
Michael, did you have your hand up?
Sorry, I need to put it back down.
Okay. Any other questions?
I'm
Again,
sure
thank
we'll
you.
have lots. Thank you so much.
Oh, we've got one from Dawn.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. Yeah, I threw it in the chat there, and just kind of connecting with what Michael Kelly was arguing. Is there any special concern here about what Michael is identifying with the bike lanes, as far as just kind of the whole process for the climate plan? Because that the public input is going to be important more than just for the initial stakeholder stuff, but well beyond, to make sure neighborhoods accept these, infrastructure changes that are going to be coming down the road here.
Correct.
I definitely agree with Don, and I'll just add, I think that even beyond just trying to engage, I think that there's a big opportunity here for community education. I think that the benefit of the work that Laura and Andy have been doing is that people are understanding, I think, kind of the interconnectedness of all of these efforts as part of our broader sustainability efforts. And I think that making that connection clear is part of what will help to ensure that neighborhoods are not only asking the right questions, but also seeing where they can work with the city to find solutions that work for everyone.
Correct. And Don, part of it is why, as the consultant is doing analysis on not only the strategies that are going to meet, but also within those technical work groups, or those they're not technical, they're topical area work groups. Part of what we're going to be talking about is who can help us implement this. And so once the implementation isn't just who's going to actually do the work, it's who's going to help us do the outreach, who's going to reach out to community, because we won't even have Jerry from the very beginning of this until we get a new position hired. So this is definitely going to be a community collaborative process going forward. And it's not something that we're just going to go, okay, we're done talking with community. No, we're gonna involve community in any policy that has to be written, and any programs that if we decide we have to implement. The climate plan says we have to have 45
Building
miles of bike lanes.
standards.
Yeah, or building performance standards. Then we're going to have a whole other process where we're going to have to meet and convene the folks that are going to be affected by that and get their input. So we've got an end goal, but the plan is going to give us the end goal. The process is still going to be long and painful, and just like any other process to get things done in collaborative situations.
Yeah, and I would just say that, just my participation, I had the pleasure of at least sitting in one of those community groups, just talking to the folks. It was very, and I appreciate those of you that attended some of these sessions. Really, it was really pretty cool to see folks coming together from different parts of the community, talking about different concerns, solutions, strategies. It was quite a learning experience for I think everybody that was there. And what was funny about that is I saw, we were on a pretty tight timeline to get through those meetings, and what I saw after the first one, we shut it down. We were hustling through the presentation and getting community feedback. And then it seemed like there was a lot of disappointment in the room. Like, what, that's it? Like they wanted more and they wanted to keep going. So to me, that was a really good thing to see that from the community and seeing people that I didn't normally see. Of course, we saw Billy. Billy was there with his hat everywhere or whatever, and that was great. But it's great to see people you've never seen before as well.
Thank you much. Yeah.
Are we ready to go back and hear a little more from Marty about what's happening with soil building? Marty,
Marty?
are you there?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
well,
Well,
tell us.
we still have some light, and I don't know whether you can make me bigger, but you're not going to see anything with. I'm postage stamp size right now, but can I be big? How do I be big?
You're
You
big to
don't
the
get to
rest of us.
change it, but if everyone else wants to, they can move you to, I think, speaker view or pin you. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm trying to show you.
Here.
Bob Berkebile came over on Friday, and we decided that if we could get down below frost line, we might be able to keep the Johnson Sioux composters warm enough to not freeze. So it wouldn't be a lot of heat, but it would be some that would drift up through the pile and then probably blanket them in between. So we're trying to take steps in order to make sure that we, this was a ditch that I dug out next to my house, and that was a lot of fun. That was my birthday present to myself. So anyway, and then a couple Wednesdays ago, Molly brought over her environmental studies students. I'm not sure that's the correct title for the class. Molly, you're not here, are you? Hello, hello. Anyway, we went over to KC Farm School, and we built 3 Johnson Sues in those tote kind of things. Be something. I can't remember the exact name of the kind of tote. It's the one of the white tote, and they're about 300 gallons. And so we built 3 of them in the greenhouse, and I got to talk to about 25 students, and then we made them, the students, and they seemed to be very enthusiastic about the whole thing. So, and then we're trying to build one in a dog kennel. One of the a 4 by 4 by 8 foot wire enclosure that we could put some perhaps bubble wrap on the south side and turn it into a kind of a makeshift greenhouse to keep that warm. So we're moving along. It seems like it's not going, the enthusiasm is still a little bit on the lacking side, but there is more and more is building, and we're reaching out to people in down near Springfield and near St. Louis that have some experience doing Johnson Sues in a colder area than they were developed. They were developed in Las Cruces, which might seem cold. It's 3,900 feet, but it's sunshine every day, and mostly the skies are not cloudy all day. So anyway, and we're continuing to meet. We've changed our meeting time till Thursday at 10 o'clock in the morning. So if anybody is interested in coming and partaking of our we're really just trying to figure out how to do more than just Johnson Sioux, but to encourage the development of natural soils by a number of means. And I don't know really what else to say. I think we built 14 of them this year so far. It's a long way from 500, as you probably could tell if you counted.
It speaks to the fact that we shouldn't have destroyed some of the soils to begin with.
Well, that's it. I mean, every time you use anything on the soil, you are disabling the carbon sequestration organisms, the ones that put it all there to begin with. So somehow we have to deal with the idea of the pesticides and herbicides and fungicides that we use are really helping snuff our our species out. And we have to come to grips with that, and every yard is a reservoir, and it doesn't look like a reservoir. It looks like a lawn, or it looks like whatever it looks like. And people do not understand what's going on, and it's very difficult to communicate because it's complicated. So anyway, so I don't. All I know is when I get young people together and I can talk, there's movement. And so if anybody would like a Johnson Sioux in their yard, let me know, and I will probably personally build it if I have life in my body. I'm really interested in us respecting nature in a very deep way. It's not a utility. It's not a resource. It's our life. It's our very life, and the same life that flows through us, and the same microbes that flow through us, flow through our food, flow through the soil. And we got to get that figured out. So,
Marty, can I ask a question?
Oh, please do.
So in your public engagement and your outreach, when I've talked to Sarah Crowder of the Heartland Tree Alliance about planting, she never mentions carbon sequestration, saving the plant. She has to roll benefit.
I'm having trouble hearing you.
I can try to help that out. Give me a second.
Sure.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Quite well.
Much better. Okay. So Sarah Crowder has to talk about beauty, or she has to talk about legacy, community engagement, and a tree is something that is going to be there for 30 or 40 years. When you do public outreach about this, is there a higher order benefit that you can think of that's a little bit more visceral?
Well, I don't I don't see anything more visceral than extinction.
But that tends to turn people off when it in a very kind of backwards way.
Yeah, because they're frightened.
They get frozen.
They're scared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think that is one of the things that we've been grappling with as an environmental community for 30 years now, is that, waving our hands around and screaming that the sky is falling just hasn't worked. And so, when you're recuperating the soil and when this is going to be producing an effect to create more pockets, and, as you said, from your other lecture the kind of bed spring molecules that are going to sequester water and carbon both at the same time. In terms of long-term soil fertility and the ability to support other activities or other organisms that they may naturally want to have in that space. Can you get into those details?
Can I get into them right here and now, or what?
No. I mean, like when you engage with the public. I mean, there's.
Well, I do to the degree that they will sit still for it. The ones that come out do, but it's the deafening horde, the ones that do not respond to me in any manner. You know, I put those videos out to almost 100 different people who are on Jerry's list, and I got hardly, maybe none, one or two people who took it seriously. There's a learning curve here. It's not easy, but it's going to be a lot easier than extinction. You know, the people whose houses and who got toasted in their cars on the West Coast,
right,
during those fires.
Right.
You know, the people who are in the events that this thing is causing become converted or dead. You know, I mean, it's like, how can you say it any clearer?
Well, but
and so
that's what I'm trying to say, is that like that tack is probably not going to be as effective as figuring out what the natural motivations of the people that are the lowest hanging fruit for this conversation in terms of that organic space. So if you can talk about gardens, native plants, long-term fertility that can bend the cost curve of their yard maintenance. So if you're talking about a fertile soil that is naturally a little bit more pest protected because of some of the types of things that you're doing, it seems to me that the conversation that we're having here and the conversation about soil cover and biopositive feedback loops in terms of native species could potentially go hand in hand. So you've got people who are interested in using and appreciating their soil for a natural life giver that it already is. And if they think that the only way to have a proper, respectable yard is to deplete it and kick it with as much chemical as they can, then you need to potentially, I think that a positive avenue would be to look into the folks who are moving in the opposite direction and talk to them in a language that they understand, that they might find motivating.
Well, I do, but there are not very many of them.
Well, one of the things that has come up, and maybe we could let Andy speak to this in his OEQ report, is there has been a little movement, I would say, fair to say, discussion, Andy, about the city's approach to enforcement of the weed ordinance.
Yeah, it's in my OAQ report.
Yeah.
Why don't we just move to that, and then we can continue the discussion after you've given us some of that information.
I could speak to a piece of that. Okay. The city, the assistant city manager, and the guy from the mayor's office, and the head of codes came, and I had a picture taken with the head of codes right in front of my urban wilderness, and so there was talk that this will happen, but I will believe that when I'm involved in the conversations, and I haven't been since that time. So that was almost a month. Did I report on that last time? don't think I did, but that may be, and Andy knows a little bit about that because he's been in that loop with me, or I have been in that loop. So go ahead, Andy. I'm done with that part.
We also have a hand up from Jim Turner, who's one of our guests. Did you have a question for Marty?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I wanted to remind Marty that we had an hour-long, our weekly Zoom group about bioreactors. We had a hour-long conversation with a lawn care specialist out in Ontario, Canada, who gave very good advice about how to go about selling this to for more adoption. And we certainly are keeping that in mind. And in particular, he suggested that we that we ask local libraries to put us on a program to make presentations there, and that can be a very good way to spread our message further. So we're talking about trying to get that done next spring. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jim. Andy, do you want to kind of fill us in on where we are on that and what's going on with OEQ?
Sure. Okay, I guess I will start with that natural landscaping issue. So there was, of course, this was, I don't know how far back this started, Marty, well, for you decades ago, but I think with Dennis, the Star editorial and other things that kind of caught the eye of the city. There was a variety of folks that, of course, met with Marty. Maurice from the mayor's office was out there. I know Melissa, one of our assistant city managers, met with Marty. And what I reached out to them back about 2 months ago is, hey, we're hearing all kinds of concerns, issues in relation to our nuisance code and how that is not necessarily conducive to natural landscaping and in the sense that how that would be supportive of our climate action goals. So is there any appetite within the neighborhoods department to revisit the nuisance code to be a little bit more amenable to these types of solutions? And to my surprise, yes, they thought it was probably time to do so. I would have to say that Marty, it was very influential in changing some minds that, from what I'm hearing on the inside. So Marty, keep up the good work there.
Oh, good. Thank you. I see.
Yeah.
I don't get this feedback often.
No, and I'm going to give it to you because I know you need to hear this and to know that, what you're saying, it doesn't fall in deaf ears within the city government. We have good people here. They're trying to do what they do with the ordinances and the codes that we've got. So what I was asked to do by Melissa, which is the assistant city manager, was to put together a presentation for neighborhoods to start the conversation on natural landscaping. And so I went ahead and put something together for them, and it got delayed a week just because my own personal schedule got kind of in the way, but gave a presentation to them yesterday. Now, I will say that Neighborhoods is going through a transition. So Neighborhoods has a new director. So Forrest Decker is now the new director for Neighborhoods. And Neighborhoods, if you hadn't caught it before, Neighborhoods and Housing split apart. So Housing is its own department now, and Neighborhoods is its own department. So Forrest Decker was promoted to director of Neighborhoods, and of course, several of you that may know Forrest know he's an environmental guy at heart, I think he's very much in favor, as well as the assistant city manager. I think the vision for Neighborhoods is to become more, I guess, less punitive, to try to find ways to work with the neighborhoods, to be a little less harsh on these codes. And I think they're willing to start with a nuisance code. So we looked at specifically what that code says. I identified the definitions and then basically explained to them, probably just like Marty did, what are the benefits of this type of, natives and natural landscaping? What are the benefits to the community? What's the benefits to the climate? the whole range of things that you get out of that. And from their perspective, what they're interested in is, what does that code look like? How do we do that? So myself and I had some help from staff. We kind of surveyed the codes that are out there across the country to kind of see what was available out there as options, just to see if I could lead them to something to consider, and kind of show them that there are changes being made across the country, whether it's Madison, Wisconsin to Fort Collins. There's examples around the country that we could easily draw from about how they're moving away from your standard nuisance codes, which started out decades ago for maybe a specific reason related to agriculture, but have been used, for maybe the wrong reasons on, residential. So it really was a push away from nature. So made the presentation. I think Maurice was involved. So we had the mayor's office. I had neighborhoods. Forrest was involved. There's a new deputy director for neighborhoods now. That's Delana Taylor. So she was sitting in on this as well. And we had Terrell. I think he's the code enforcement guy that you might have mentioned, Marty. So, we talked about what the options might be on the nuisance code going forward, who our partners might be that we could kind of partner with to basically garner input, and Marty, your name came up. I volunteered you, so you'll probably be contacted before too long. So, here's the thing. With that, Marty, comes, we need a sense of collaboration and negotiation. So, you've got decades of a head start on the city on this issue. All right. So, one of the things that, they want to be amenable to change, what does that look like that meets the needs for the whole community as a whole? So there may be, we'll start somewhere with that conversation, and we'll see where the negotiations go. But I think you'll have an opportunity and others to have some say in what at the end of the day that code becomes. So I'm very optimistic about it. The way things are with the city, you got to be a little bit patient. We're still short-staffed. Citywide, we are still way understaffed. And this is the problem throughout the organization, as people like Jerry are bailing on us left and right. So, and the downside to that is we're not able to refill the positions as quickly. There's administrative bureaucracy we have to go through. And to be honest with you, we're struggling to find people to come work for the city. So it's quite systemic and it's a challenge. But the will is there. I've got upper management support. So we broke up after the meeting was over. We have different tasks. I have a certain task related to this. So I will be heading up one particular aspect of this conversation. And then it's either going to be Forrest or Delana will be reaching out to various stakeholders and you, Marty, probably as well, to kind of start talking about the code specifically. So keep you posted as I hear more about that internally. But I think it was a great meeting we had yesterday. They were very much supportive, I think, of moving to something different than what we have. Their concern, of course, is that they want the community to think, that you may not get everything you want. There's got to be some wiggle room for consideration about public safety, about the environment, about education. That was part of it that came out of it. Signage is a thing. And I think you've done some signage, Marty, out at your property. And that was kind of a selling point for people, is that we as a city have to do a better job of highlighting those positive, best management practices, if we want to call them that. So signage, getting the word out, educating the community about the benefits of natural landscaping. And that's the term that we're using right now. But anyways, I don't want to go too much longer. I've got a few other things, but I'd say it's a good start.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions about that before I move on to other topics? Okay. All right. I'll start at the top of my list then. First and foremost, I would like to remind everybody that this is Jerry's last official EMC meeting as a employee of the city. So want to just put it on your calendar if you haven't already seen the invitation yet. All right, it's going to be okay. November 30th, we're going to have a reception for Jerry at 12:30 at City Hall. So we'll have some light refreshments and cake or whatever. And Rachel, have we sent out invitations yet, or are we still waiting to do that?
I haven't sent them out, but Jerry's creating a list for me, and we'll get those out very soon.
Okay. So you folks here on this meeting, you get the first dibs, November 30th. So that's at 12:30. So you want to get that on your calendar, hold the day. We certainly encourage you to come on down to City Hall and visit with us for a little bit to honor everything Jerry's done for the city. So I can certainly attest that we'll miss him here. He's been a great asset. And I certainly appreciate everything I've learned from him since I've had the opportunity to work with him. So anyhow.
What time was that meeting?
It'll be 12:30. It's 12:30 to 2 o'clock, was it, Rachel?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, Jerry, we're gonna have to do a screen grab of you and then reserve one of our squares on our Hollywood Squares for you every month.
Okay. So sort of related to administrative, I'll talk a little bit about staffing. As you all know, Rachel here is our administrative assistant, but I will have to say she's not going to be our administrative assistant much longer. So she's done a great job in that capacity. With that, I'd like to kind of formally announce that we have promoted Rachel. So she is, if you don't know, Rachel actually has an environmental degree and we grabbed her from the water lab as a chemist. So she took a chance on us to come work for us as an administrative assistant. She's done a great job over the past, what has been a year and a half, 2 years. It's been a blur with COVID, but we had the opportunity to fill a entry-level environmental position. And so I'd like to congratulate Rachel. We're going to promote her to an environmental officer position. So
good.
Thank you.
So hopefully it won't be too long before we find another administrative person here to help us out. But anyways, Rachel, it's well deserved. Okay, we've already talked about the climate protection resilience plan. I would just stress that this has really been an all hands on deck kind of project. At this point, we've been dealing with the community. I know Laura's got her hands full. We're all trying to shield her, protect her from other things coming our way that come from all different directions. But they're also participating in the process. Our analyst has been out in the field at these community engagement. Rachel's been out there, Jerry, myself. We're all getting involved in this as we carry a little bit more of the weight than Brendel in these particular meetings. So anyways, it's been fun, and we still have a ways to go, but we're certainly looking forward to getting to the final product. So all right, a couple updates on some other projects. The LED streetlight conversion project, it's still on the table. We haven't forgotten about it. We received bids on that back, what's it been, 2 months now. The selection committee is still reviewing the bids. There's been some financial analysis done on it, but we as a selection committee have not been able to find a time to get together to make the actual selections. So I know the city manager is really eager to get moving on that project and at least get the pilot project up and going, both in the Northland and south of the river. So it's just taking a little longer than we'd like to just coordinate those efforts with the selection committee. We've got people in various departments are involved with that. So you may have heard, just if you haven't heard about it, the solar array project at the airport. We are moving forward with a feasibility study on that. I'm going to kind of show you real quick here if I can share my screen, if I can find it. Here we go. So this is kind of what, hopefully when you see it, you'll see what we're talking about. So this is kind of the proposal at this point. It's, we've got around 2,000, 3,000 acres that, we're looking at the feasibility of how much of that around the airport we can use. So this is a concept of what we're looking at, trying to put in a solar array system that somewhere in the order of maybe 200 megawatts to 300 megawatts in capacity. So lots of hurdles to getting this to the end point. Looking at probably 2 or 3 years. If everything is feasible, we get through all the negotiations with Evergy and all the other partners that need to be involved in this project. But just thought you may want to see what the current rendering is of what we're looking at. And feel free to ask questions along the way as I'm kind of flying through these various things here. Energy code. So regarding the energy code, we met with Councilman Boo earlier today and city planning, and it looks like we've been tasked with going ahead and putting together an ordinance for consideration in adopting the 21 IECC energy code. So stay tuned. I think we're shooting for a introduction to council sometime in mid-December. So we talked about the pros and cons. We're also considering some strengthening amendments in that code to include being EV ready for residential as well as solar ready on residential. So and I think on those strengthening amendments, there was some compromise in terms of running more running conduit than running the actual electrical. So you can kind of keep your costs down a little bit on if you're just running the pathway and the conduit to make that happen. So anyways, it's just the start. We'll keep you posted on that, but that seems to be moving forward in a good direction. Downside is Greg Franzen is retiring as the building official from the city. He is obviously the most experienced in moving city codes forward through the process. So to some extent, he retires at the end of the month as well. So Jeff Lee will be kind of helping to take over, but he'll also be working with the director of city planning and myself to kind of help shepherd this along to the best of our abilities. So anyways, that's the energy code. Let's see here. I did want to make a mention. This is one of these subcommittees, the lead committee. The city has a lead standards committee, and Joe Nichols was the EMC representative on that committee. Not sure if you know this yet or not, but Joe is resigning from the commission, so he will no longer be participating, and therefore the commission will need to find a representative to participate on the lead standards committee. The lead standards committee are primarily city employees from various departments. Usually includes one council member, and then the EMC gets one member at the table. So at some point, the commission might want to consider a representative to sit at the table on lead standards. That particular committee, we meet quarterly, and it had taken a couple years sabbatical. So I've been working with the city architect to kind of bring it back up to meeting on a regular basis. And we've got a kind of a draft of a variety of issues that the committee needs to tackle, such as revising the city lead ordinance about, going forward with certification on city buildings, a variety of other topics related to that. So last thing I will throw out there is budget. So the city budget season is underway. I will have to say that this one is going to be a little crazy. We have a new city manager, sort of a fairly new council. Things have not been the norm so far. So I would just encourage the EMC to kind of, if you're interested in influencing how the city directs its dollars in the budget, I would certainly encourage you to kind of pay attention to the opportunities that will come about to comment on the budget. Also, keep your eyes open for structural changes in the organization and the effects that that might have overall on whether it's the environmental or sustainability efforts of the city. So just it's moving fast and furious. So pay attention.
Andy, can you elaborate a little bit on some of the differences that you're noticing from past years?
Differences, one, it's you know, the process internally for how we submit our budget requests. You know, we were told straight out, you know, go for a zero budget. You know, basically don't ask for anything more. You know, the city's doing, I would say, okay. They've done some financial analysis. We seem to be coming out of the budget shortfall from COVID, but it's not very strong. I mean, it's just minimally better. So they're very reluctant to take on any big spending projects or anything of that nature. So we've had to kind of adjust and make some hardline decisions about what we're going to ask for. And what was different this time around that was not typical was we had to justify every line item in our account for our particular budget. So OEQ has about $1 million budget, and that's primarily staff. And so it's, you know, we don't have a lot of extra dollars for contracting and other services, but we actually had to go through and justify every one of those line accounts and as to why I still need that money, because otherwise they would just sweep it away from us. So I can't really get into any more structural changes to the organization at this point. I would just say, just stay tuned.
Gotcha.
So that's it. That's all I have, unless there's more questions.
Thank you, Andy. Do we have any reports from committees or people who sat in on or listened to any of the council committee sessions? Hearing none, do we have any old business? I don't know of any. Any new business? Anybody have something that they feel like we've been needing to talk about that we haven't talked about yet?
Were the minutes approved?
Yes, they were. They were. Then let's have remarks from visitors, please. We're dwindling here. I can see we're dwindling.
It's in the dark time of the year.
Yeah. Is there any more from any commissioners? Anything you want us to consider for next month, or anything any burning thought you have?
I know this is an odd time to say this after Marty's comment just now, but are we ever going to meet in person again?
We've discussed it. We're kind of waiting for a signal from the city, I guess. And also
Yes. Well, I was just going to say, matter of fact, you know, obviously the mayor's order has expired more or less for the public. The city internal, our facilities, there will be some changes to kind of match up with that, probably announced by Friday or so. So yes, it's probably worth considering, you know, maybe for next month if the commission wanted to do that. And I think what I suggested, Carol, is we could certainly poll the commission to see the comfort level of the commissioners on meeting in person versus virtual. And we're trying to figure out a room maybe in City Hall that is set up for both, where we can do virtual and in person, just to see if we can make something like that happen. So again, you know, we tried it this morning for our lead standards committee, and it's a great room, but unfortunately, there's not a lot of folks around here with technical savvy to figure out how to make it work. So
I wondered what Jackson County's current requirements are. They still have a mandate, correct?
I believe so. I'm not sure if they've changed theirs to match ours yet.
Don also put something in chat about the industrial park in South KC they're looking to build.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry for the length on this thing, but it was just, I wanted to make sure I got the thoughts here, but I guess there's this area and I'm not exactly sure how much wildlife there is or there's wildlife habitat, but it looks like a huge project. And it's kind of one of these ongoing concerns that we've had in Sierra Club is what kind of, how do we get a handle on this to make sure that they're not just leveling lots of trees when we're trying to talk about, ensuring the canopy around the city as well? Is there what, and I guess my question is just what are the opportunities for city staff and the EMC, and I guess I chopped off my question there, for public comment, for directing these kinds of issues here to make sure that these kinds of considerations are made in these development projects? And it's not the best timing to have that kind of lengthy question here at the end of the meeting, and I apologize for that, but I thought I'd take the opportunity.
So I guess I can take a crack at it. I think, we wouldn't, first off, you always have access to council. So, you can go, share your grievance concerns with council members about that, particularly wherever that project might be in that particular district. I'm not an expert on the development side of things, but I would definitely, what we could do is reach out to Jeff Williams, the director of city planning, and pose that question as to what is the best avenue for us to address those kinds of concerns. And the other part of it is that resolution that we passed last week, I think, does have some language in there that we could reference. And that's part of it, is that we're going to need to share that with our city departments to kind of bring it to their attention that they do need to consider projects, programs of the city and how that affects the climate protection plan. So we need to kind of bridge that together somehow and educate internally, because I think some folks are, still around from 2008 and they sort of know of that plan. They know we're going through a new planning process, but clearly at some point there's going to have to be some internal education on what are we looking for city staff to do across the board, so when these kinds of projects come up, there's some type of consideration for the environment. So right now I don't have a clear answer for you, Don, but I'm fine to carry a question forward to our director for the codes, city planning and codes, and see what their response is to see what would be the best thing to do.
Well, that'd be great. It just seems that once it gets gets this notice in the press, that pretty much the horse is out of the barn at that point, I would think, and so it's hard to. I would think it'd be hard for now to have any sort of meaningful input on this kind of issue. So it comes back to what the kind of the internal processes of the city hall, I would think. But
yeah, and I think isn't there a zoning commission, and I mean I think there's a commission or committee that oversees these kinds of projects, and there's some type of notice requirement. But again, I'm not too.
The notice requirement though is going to be mostly adjacent to the property. It's going to be in that same vicinity. It might be useful to also, in addition to looking at the resolution that's recently been passed, to kind of highlight the stream setback and the tree planning and the different requirements that are on the books. A parcel that size surely has some drainage, surely has some areas that would be subject to some of those other ordinances. But it might just be good to do a little survey of the ordinances that might apply in general and just send a reminder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess they're getting, you know, the tax, some a substantial tax abatement as well with all this project too. And there ought to be some, if you're getting that kind of thing, you ought to get some, there ought to be some inducements here to make sure that there's environmental concerns that are met with such a project, I would hope. But yeah.
So Don, I can actually speak a little bit to that. There is the scorecard KC revision process that's happening right now. And that is being taken care of and managed by a woman in city staff named Carrie Tyndall. And I was put in touch with her by councilperson Melissa Robinson. And so they're actually going through focus groups and comment periods right now about this very topic and what projects receive what percentage of support and how those are evaluated in the first place.
Wow.
Based off of the conversation that was had before that focus group, you know, they do have set values that they're trying to incorporate, including public health, including serving primarily marginalized communities, and historically neglected communities. So, you know, that conversation is definitely ongoing. But, you know, Carrie Tyndall has a huge burden on her shoulders from this, and we're trying to support her as much as possible to stick with the values as stated.
So I might add to that because Ben reminded me about it's called Advanced KC. And it's interesting that you brought that up because you did remind me of that last week during the business session, Carrie Tyndall gave an update on Advanced KC to council, and she kind of got caught off guard because it was right after we gave our climate resolution testimony and was passing that through committee when sure enough it was fresh in their mind. Oh, what about the environment? How is that being factored into the scorecard? And to be honest with you, I didn't know about Advanced KC until maybe about a month ago. And Carrie and I have not talked about the scorecard in any detail. So to me, it seems, and she was directed by, it might have been Robinson, it might have been others, to engage with stakeholders, particularly on the environmental side, in regards to that scorecard.
Okay. Wow.
So,
Yeah.
Don, the last thing that I heard from her was that she is trying to kind of please as many different stakeholders as possible with this, and that she was looking for resources in terms of standards for environmental support. So when we're talking about, you know, potentially rain gardens, green infrastructure, right-of-way measurements for tree canopy, even potentially energy efficiency standards for these areas and for new developments, and then ways to align that with the areas of most need. So that's kind of what we're trying to support her to do.
Good luck. Tyndall, Carrie Tyndall?
Tyndall.
Tyndall. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Is there other business to come before the commission? It sounds like lots of good work is being done behind the scenes. I appreciate that, Ben, and we appreciate Marty, and we appreciate Andy and everybody that's busy. Laura, we know you're coming and going all the time, so thank you for that. Rachel, congratulations, and Jerry, we're going to miss you. Surely you're not going to be disappeared. You're going to be around, right?
I've already asked Rachel to make sure I'm on the notice list for the meetings. So
he's got to be in every topical area work group. That was the reason I'm letting him go.
Yes. Well, and if you need to, you can wear a disguise, but we're happy to have you all the time.
Thank you.
If there isn't other business to come before the meeting, I suggest we adjourn.
That's good.
Yeah.
I-
Time to
I
fix up
second
some
that
dinner.
motion.
Gonna miss you, Jerry. Bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Let's see. I don't know. I just guess I go away.